The sun was just beginning to climb over the jagged peaks of the mountain range, painting the world in gold and rose, when old Harland, the wealthy patriarch of the valley, leaned heavily on his carved walking staff and surveyed his sprawling estate. From the high stone terrace of his manor, he looked out over the green pastures, the orchards heavy with fruit, and the winding river that glinted like a silver serpent in the morning light. His 5 daughters, each one so different in temperament and beauty, were assembled beneath him. Celeste, the elegant eldest; Mirabelle, refined and soft-spoken; Eveline, gentle and dreamy; Rosina, bold and proud; and little Maren, the youngest, quiet, awkward, often teased by the others and overlooked, as though she were a shadow among roses. Old Harland's heart swelled with pride as he watched them, but also with a secret tremor of concern. He knew that soon he would have to offer his daughters in marriage, not just to any suitor, but to men of character and strength, for his name, fortune, and legacy were at stake. That very morning, word had gone out through the valley and into the wilderness beyond. Harland was ready to choose a suitor for one of his daughters. A modest festival was arranged at the manor's courtyard, banners fluttering on high poles, musicians tuning their strings, and servants bustling here and there with trays of fruit and wine. Villagers, noblemen, merchants, and even wanderers from the rugged mountains gathered, each curious to know who might win a place in Harland's family, and with it, a share in his wealth. Among the crowd was a man so unlike the others that whispers followed his footsteps, the so-called mountain man, clad in worn leather, with rough hair and eyes hard as flint. He carried a simple pack and a hunting knife. No carriage, no fine clothes, no ribboned hat. They said he lived in the hills, alone, surviving by his wits and his strength, and that he had no interest in Harland's gold. Yet here he was. Old Harland nodded gravely as his daughters formed a line before him. "Choose any of my daughters," he called out to the assembly, his voice strong though weathered by time. "Any daughter. Let your heart speak, and I shall honor your choice." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Noble suitors stepped forward with proud postures, each flatterer more polished than the last. Some offered titles, some offered money, some offered connections. One by one, suitors presented themselves, bowing low, offering their hands, and promising loyalty. Celeste, the eldest, was first. She smiled graciously, and the Duke of Ravenwood, a man in fine brocade, advanced. He spoke of estates, alliances, grandeur. The crowd applauded. Then Mirabelle's suitor followed, an earnest young merchant. With steady hands and a gentle manner, he promised to double his trade routes, to strengthen Harland's business. Eveline's admirer came, shy and sincere, offering to build libraries and schools so that knowledge would flourish in the valley. Rosina's suitor was bold, a captain of men who spoke of adventure, conquest and glory beyond the mountains. Each suitor seemed proper, worthy, each daughter deserving. Then as the festival reached its height, the mountain man stepped forward. The crowd fell silent. Some scoffed behind cupped hands. What business did a rough, solitary man have asking for one of Harland's daughters, especially when sweepingly handsome and high-born suitors had made their bids? The mountain man said nothing for a while. He simply stood, gazing at the daughters as though weighing them. Harland studied him too. "Speak, man," Harland said with a voice that was kind but firm. "Which of my daughters do you choose?" There was a hush as people leaned forward, holding their breath. The mountain man's voice was soft, but carried Maren. He pointed to the youngest daughter, the one no one had paid much attention to. A ripple went through the crowd. Some laughed under their breath, others gasped. Maren's sisters exchanged incredulous glances. Old Harland's jaw dropped. The Duke's offer was passed over. The captain, the merchant, the scholar, all ignored. The mountain man had chosen Maren, the one everyone thought too plain, too shy, too awkward to be desirable. Murmurs rose like wind through trees. "Who is he to choose her?" someone whispered. Another voice, sharper. "Why, Maren? Has he no ambition?" Still another, more kindly. "Perhaps there is something more to him than we see." Maren herself stood frozen, shock and confusion flickering across her face. Her cheeks flushed, her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to protest. She did not know this man. How could she accept? But her gentle eyes found his steady gaze, and she felt something stir inside her that she had never felt before. Quiet, firm confidence, and a surprising calm. Old Harlan stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Very well," he said. "If you choose Maren, then so be it. You shall court her, live in my lands, and I shall judge your worth." He paused, looking the mountain man up and down. "You have nothing noble in your dress, no title, no great wealth. What do you bring, and why should I trust you with Maren?" The mountain man's eyes darkened just a little. "I bring my honor, my strength, and my heart. I live by my word. I do not have a gilded coat, but I have my hands, and I can build, and I can protect." He paused, gathering his thought. "Maren, would you walk with me in the hills, if I may ask?" Maren trembled but nodded. Her sisters gasped. The crowd leaned forward, some with curiosity, some with scorn. The mountain man offered his hand. Maren, after a moment, placed her delicate one in his rough palm. The contrast was striking, her soft fingers brushing his calloused ones. He lifted her slightly, and she stepped beside him, her world changing in a heartbeat. The festival, once full of pomp, now felt different. A low murmur of surprise ran through the gathering. Some people whispered that Harlan had made a mistake. Others, that the mountain man was foolish for choosing someone so humble. Still, a few watched with wonder at Maren's quiet strength. As they walked together from the terrace toward a less formal side of the estate, Harlan followed slowly, his heart heavy with both pride and fear. When they reached the edge of the manor's gardens, the mountain man turned to Maren under a blooming cherry tree, its petals fluttering in the breeze like rose-pink snow. He knelt on one knee in the soft grass. The guests gasped again. "Maren," he said, his voice gentle, "I do not know what the future will bring. I may ask you to leave this place, to walk with me into landscapes you have never known. But I promise you this, I will honor you, respect you, and never take you for granted. If you agree to be mine, you will not be a prize. You will be my partner, my equal, my dearest companion." Maren felt her heart racing, her breath shallow. Tears came, but she blinked them back, not wanting to seem silly. I accept," she whispered. The mountain man reached out, and she leaned onto him, a fragile but firm alliance. Old Harlan watched, his eyes glistening, as he saw not only his daughter, but the man she chose, making a vow that felt more honest than any golden ring or fancy promise. Some in the crowd applauded the sincerity. Others remained skeptical. The Duke's face flushed with anger. The captain scowled. The scholar averted his gaze, but Harlan raised his hand to silence them. "Very well," he said again. "We will give you time. You will live in my lands, you will prove your worth, and you will court Maren properly." The mountain man nodded, having expected no less. Maren squeezed his hand, her own resolve firming. As the sun climbed higher, the festival resumed in a different tone. The musicians struck up a gentle melody, slower now, more thoughtful. The crowd moved, parting respectfully for the pair, and servants brought wine and bread. But Maren and her man remained quietly at that side of the garden, speaking softly, sharing laughter and shy smiles. They seemed to them all like two halves of a gentle storm, calm yet alive with electricity. Later, when the nobles pressed close to the mountain man, with polite but pointed questions about his origins, he replied humbly. He had grown up in a small mountain cabin, raised by a widowed mother who taught him self-reliance, kindness, and the value of honesty. He had learned to track game, to climb cliffs, to survive winters. But more than that, he said, he had learned the worth of love that is not bought, but earned. He did not expect Harlan's gold. Perhaps he did not even want it. He asked for Maren, who had always been dismissed, who had always spoken softly, cared for the orchard, tended wounded birds, and listened to the wind. He said she understood quiet things, silence, sorrow, dreaming, and that he needed someone who saw, not just looked. As he spoke, Maren's sisters watched, their expressions shifting. Celeste's face fell a little. She tugged at her gown, suddenly less sure of her own bold beauty. Mirabelle, ever gentle, bit her lip. Evelyn's eyes shimmered with tears, not of sadness exactly, but of wonder. Bold Rosina, opened her mouth to protest but closed it again, struck by something she did not expect. Even old Harland, in his strength, felt a tightening in his throat. He realized that perhaps he had judged this mountain man, and Maren, wrongly. By midday, the formal part of the festival ended. The suitors retired to a smaller gathering, quietly nursing bruised pride. The mountain man and Maren remained by one of the garden's low hedges, speaking of dreams. Maren told him how she had always longed to see what lay beyond her father's lands, how she had secretly climbed a little hill as a girl just to feel the wind in her hair and hear the echo of her own footsteps. He smiled and said that if she wished, she could accompany him into his mountains, to places where snow clung to cliffs and where the air was so thin she felt she was breathing stars. She laughed softly, amazed by the boldness of his offer, but also afraid of leaving everything she had ever known. "You will never walk that path alone," he said, his voice strong. "I will be with you every step. I ask nothing more than your trust." And she nodded, though her heart pounded in her chest like thunder. At that moment a servant approached with food, a basket of fresh bread, cheese, berries, and a flask of cider. The mountain man accepted gratefully, and Maren took a piece of bread, offering him half. They ate in silence for a while, as the breeze rustled through the cherry blossoms, petals drifting like thoughts into the air. The peace between them felt real and precious, yet fragile, because so many in the world would doubt them, the nobility, her sisters, and even father. But Maren realized that in his rough, steady eyes she was seen, not as the shy, awkward youngest daughter, not as the one mocked, but as someone of worth. As the afternoon sun shifted, old Harland came to stand beside them, leaning on his staff. He watched them quietly for a minute, then turned to Maren, his voice gruff but tender. "My daughter, you have made a brave choice." She looked up at him, unsure. "Do you regret your offer choosing you gave when I favored power and prestige?" He whispered, more to himself than to her. She shook her head. "No, father. I feel at peace. That is all I ever wanted." He nodded, a single tear glistening in his eye. Then he turned to the mountain man. "You may remain at my lands for a time. Prove to me you can care for her, keep her safe, and earn her trust." The mountain man bowed his head. "I will, sir. I promise." Harland sighed, a sound of resignation and hope. "Very well." The sun now hung low, and the guests began to drift away. The nobles, the suitors, the curious villagers, all scattered, back to their homes, their carriages, or their mountain paths. The festival's banners drooped lazily in the evening breeze. The musicians packed away their instruments. In the cooling dusk, Maren and the mountain man walked together to the terraces, side by side, as though they had always belonged together. The petals from the cherry tree fluttered at their feet. The fading light cast long shadows around them. Before the final goodbyes, the mountain man addressed the remaining guests. His voice was firm but not arrogant. "Thank you, all of you, for witnessing my choice. I do not seek to insult your daughters or to boast of my riches. I only ask for patience, kindness, and a chance. Maren deserves a life beyond being mocked, overlooked, and underestimated. If you will watch, I will show her what she means to me, not with gold, not with titles, but with every action I take. Every dawn I rise to protect her. Every night I rest by her side." The crowd stood silent. Then slowly some applauded. Others nodded respectfully. Even a few of the nobles, though stiff in pride, tucked away their scorn behind thoughtful expressions. In that moment, Maren felt something warm and fierce inside her chest, like courage, like resolve, like love. She looked up at the mountain man, and he smiled just the slightest, and reached out his hand again. She placed her palm in his, and together they stood as the last light of day faded. Petals drifting in the air, the world alight with possibility. As night settled, they parted ways, the mountain man returning to his simple cabin in the hills, and Maren to her father's manor, where she would prepare for a new life. But neither felt alone. She carried his promise in her heart, and he carried her in his thoughts. And somewhere deep in both of them a quiet thrill bloomed, that perhaps this unusual union would not just change their lives, it might change everything.